Miss Lucy had some leeches, her leeches like to suck. And when they drank up all her blood, she didn't give up on even the doctors had locked her in her cell. Miss Lucy screamed all night that they should go to bloody hell, or to the surgeon, the scalpel hold and blunt. They'll tie you to the table, then he'll mutilate your tongue. It's nearly tea time, the lunatics arrive. The keepers leave them all until there's no one left alive. The little rodents are eaten up by cats. We're subject to experiments like laboratory rats. I've dropped a teacup, how easily they break. I'm on my hands and knees until I pay for my mistake. Off all your clothing, we've only just begun. We had no anesthesia, it's 1841. Think we should tell you.
Hello, this is our video evaluation on the exhibition that took place in the university during the week of October 31st and November 4th. The components of this group are myself, Valeria Melendez.
I'm Eric Monserrate.
Denise Morales.
I'm Josue Sosa.
For our exhibition, we exhibited two works of digital literature, the first one being The Jew's Daughter in the fourth floor of the library, and our remix of Torogo Gorge in the basement of the Informatica building. For our narrative, we used a ghost girl to guide the audience throughout the campus.
Mm-hmm.
Anything you want to add to that, Denise?
Well, as her job as the ghost girl was not only to immerse the audience into the exhibit experience, but also to connect both works together and making them one coherent story instead of two separate stories. Which I guess jumps into what we thought of our exhibition. I think there were a lot of positives that happened throughout our exhibit. First of all, it was introducing people to a new form of literature and a new form of experiencing storytelling. A lot of people were very excited about it and thought it was cool, that it was really futuristic looking, and that's definitely a positive. It's very eye-catching, and we know that in the future it could draw more people's attention, because a lot of people approached me thinking that it was really cool and that they wanted to take part of it. It also has the fact that it is interactive is also a very positive thing, in the sense that it's still even more different from the traditional narrative, because it immerses the audience into it. It makes them a part of the story, and like we said earlier, the little girl is guiding them, so they are the ones figuring out the story, that they're kind of the adventurer, like a video game, which again is very eye-catching and very good. I do think that people responded very positively to it. They really enjoyed it. They thought it was cool. The people who took the time to try and understand the story, to use the resources that we gave them, really enjoyed it and understood the story and understood what we were trying to do with it, which means that it was a success, that we did our job as the exhibitors. So I do think overall that the exhibit itself can be qualified as a success.
However, despite all these positives that Denise just mentioned, we did find several limitations to the study. The first one being that the application that was used for the audience to help discover these works of digital literature didn't have instructions on how to use the application, or that our videos weren't specific as to where the audience had to go. So I found a lot of people who were pretty confused as to what it is they had to do to find the works of digital literature, or what was the purpose of the application. Our locations were also a definite setback for the study, since they were not easily accessible to the audience. To go to the basement in the Informatica building was definitely out of the way for a lot of people. It was kind of hidden, and I don't think a lot of people found that location.
I would disagree that it wasn't difficult to access, because it is an open area that is accessible for students. That's why it's there. I do think that what was limiting was the distance, and people are just lazy, because the other group, our partners that also exhibited their own story that week, said that they encountered the same problem. People would take their time to go to the first part of the exhibit and they really enjoyed it, but once they told them they needed to walk somewhere else to get the second half of the story, they'd be like, nah, it's okay, I won't bother. So I don't think it was the location per se, I just think it was the students' motivation to cross that distance,
right,
to get to the other half of the exhibit.
I also think a lot of people stumbled upon the locations by coincidence.
By accident, that's true.
That definitely happened a lot. There were internet limitations also. the application worked with the internet, the videos loaded online. So in some of these locations, you simply couldn't get access to the internet, which made it difficult to interact with some of the things we had,
Yeah.
such as the Wikitude application and the videos.
That's very true.
Once again, distance between locations. Library and Informatica is about a 5-minute walk from each other. People might get unmotivated to go to the other location. Another thing was the technology. In the audiovisual room, we had a projector that continued to fall asleep. And so this definitely limited the viewing of the Toroku Gorge remix because every time we would enter the room, the monitor was asleep.
And another problem that we encountered in Informatica was the lack of knowledge from the staff that's working there. They weren't aware that we were exhibiting things, so once they saw that the classroom was empty and a class wasn't happening, they would actually turn everything off, and then we'd have to go back and set it up again, which was also kind of a hiccup in the exhibit because maybe someone took the time to take the 5-minute walk from the library to the morgue, but when they got there, it was all shut off and it wasn't working. Like the song wasn't even playing, it was completely shut down. So I think in the future we would need to inform the staff that something is happening there, that even if there's no one in the room present, that is kind of the point, and not to interrupt the exhibit itself.
Well, promotion is the key always to reach out to the audience and get them interested in whatever you're trying to sell or gather them to your exhibition. In our case, our promotion could have reached out more to the audience if it would have been less, less flyers and less, papers and more digital and more technological. Social media today is, our method of communicating. And we could have tried to promote this more through social media. Also, the flyers that were posted during that week and before were a little bit unspecific. They could have be more specific in terms of the location, in terms of the app, and the structure of what we were trying to do. We could have been more detailed on the promotions as well. It could have had more details into what was the purpose and what were the backgrounds and origins of this exhibition as well. The audience, which is like the heart of this exhibition, well, we faced a few problems with language barrier. The exhibition was completely in English as well as the app. By not having specific instructions and by having a certain language barrier in a university campus here in Puerto Rico, we might have had less audience, and also had problems with making the exhibition less exposed to other students in the campus who were unaware of the exhibition as well. Some people might have thought that it could have been more appealing or more interesting in terms of trying to please the general audience instead of having a certain limited audience who could have been interested in digital literature. Some people don't even know what digital literature is, and they're starting to getting to know this by these types of exhibitions and applications. Other problems that we had with our audience is that maybe trying to rely too much on an application and having certain problems with telephones and phones. They might have problems with internet, or they cannot actually download the app. Even if it's on Android or iPhone, then there could have been that limitation in this exhibition as well. Another limitation that we had on the Juice Daughter exhibition was the heavy display of the text on both Toroku Gorge in the audiovisual and the display here in the library.
I absolutely agree, because since it was very text-based and very text-heavy, it didn't necessarily catch a lot of people's attention at first, and also it wasn't very clear how you would interact with it, especially with the Juice Daughter. A lot of people didn't understand that they had to hover over the blue words in order to get the text to change and to get more parts of the story. So that was definitely a mistake on our part, that we didn't try to attract people more visually.
No, absolutely. And another
May
thing,
I intercept here?
absolutely.
For the Juice Daughter, I did put up some little flyers that said interact with me, but the maintenance would continue taking them down, which is definitely another limitation because they would keep removing our flyers.
Yep, it all comes back to not informing people enough about what was going on. We were in very public places that need to be maintained continuously, and not having someone there 24 hours a day telling them not to throw things away and not to turn off the display was very frustrating and was a major roadblock in how we exhibited and how it all turned out.
Absolutely. Another limitation that we could have avoided was trying to make a little bit more, less,
Black and white
pale.
text.
Yes, the pale black and white text on a white background that doesn't have, visuals or colors. And maybe even if the Jews daughter and the Torogogosh, which are, by default like that, we could have added more visuals ourselves that we could have found or created,
I agree. I do think that our focus on keeping it eerie and creepy and mysterious and minimalistic in order to achieve that sense of mystery kind of didn't attract people as much as it would have if it was a little bit more like popping everywhere. It's like, oh, look at me.
Which goes back again to the audience, the type of audience we were trying to attract.
Exactly. It all comes down to what we expected of our audience, and we didn't take into consideration every type of person that could have interacted with
and
our
another,
exhibit.
absolutely, and another detail that I noticed during the exhibition was that when Valeria posted a little picture of a ghost and that said "interact with me," without the maintenance, like removing, it could have been more appealing to the audience because they were feeling a little more welcoming towards the interaction with the technical.
That's true. I guess
materials.
you could say that ours just looked a little too intimidating. It was a lot of text. It was this huge portrait of a girl staring at you, and it wasn't as welcoming as, let's say, our counterpart who exhibited theirs, that there was cool futuristic glasses.
Absolutely.
I totally agree with that. Which comes down again, our view of what our audience was going to be. So, yeah. You want to take it away?
We have learned a lot from this project. We think that with some suggestions for future research, they could be really, really improved. One of them is encourage people to download the app because not much people downloaded it, so they were a little lost. We can probably start a campaign previous to the exhibition, a more intensive one, so more people can download the app. Maybe adding more instructions because some people were a little lost because some instruction could be a little ambiguous. But if we add more instructions to the app, maybe people won't get so lost. And maybe the stories need a little more context when we display them, because when people read the story, they were thinking, okay, this is the story, but how did this happen on a historical context? So they would ask the people that was supervising the exhibition, and we were glad to help them, but maybe giving them a little more context using the app, maybe that can help with
Clearing things out.
Yeah.
So yeah, taking all that into consideration, even the negatives can be seen as a good thing because we've traveled through all the hiccups. We know what works, what doesn't work, what we can do to make things better. So even though it was flawed, it did have its flaws, we did make our mistakes, it was still a positive experience and can definitely be applied and for more research in the future. So I think that's good.
Yeah, overall, it was a pretty successful exhibition.
I agree.
Yes.